today, Dallas Mavericks fans, MFFLs all around. The Dallas Mavericks will now be facing the LA Clippers in Game 2 tonight, 9 p.m. Central Time. I believe the game will be on TNT, ESPN, I believe. Well, we'll check it out. But the Dallas Mavericks are going to have to come in here locked and loaded because you did have a terrible showing in Game 2. That second quarter was atrocious. 8 points in the second quarter. Only putting up 30 points in an entire half. The Dallas Mavericks will not do that again. I can pretty much bet the house that the Dallas Mavericks will not have an offensive performance like that once again tonight, because this is one of those games. At no point did I honestly feel it was out of hand, which is kind of, I guess you want to say, the most disheartening thing, because you didn't have Kawhi Leonard playing for the Clippers. So of course the fans are naturally going to say, this is a game we had to have, this is a game we had to win. I feel like the Dallas Mavericks are still a very good matchup with the LA Clippers, and this is not anything that I'm going to completely just hold on to everything from Game 1. There were so many ugly things, obviously, but if I think the Dallas Mavericks was going to help them the most in Game 2 is just being intentional. One thing you saw for some reason, especially early on in the game, and Kyrie Irving alluded to this a little bit in the post game, he said he felt like the team, this is the first time obviously this team has played together in the playoffs, and the number one thing he saw, and he said he believes himself, was they were just not intentional. They were not aggressive. It wasn't as direct. And I kind of noticed the same thing earlier on. I was kind of speaking about it as the game was going on. At home, it's like one of those things you're seeing. It was like there was no really precise, I guess you want to say, just real decision making, I guess y'all say. Luka Doncic, I'm going to say, obviously, he's looking to set guys up early on in the game if you're paying attention to what happened in Game 1. But I feel like that was the perfect opportunity. Of course, Luka, you want to get guys involved. But once you saw the shots were not falling, this is where your superstars have got to take over, at least until the rest of the guys start to feel that their own sense of rhythm. And one thing I'm going to say, Luka Doncic has got to be more aggressive offensively. He passed up lots of floaters, lots of shots at the rim early on in the game, and I felt like that became a domino effect. You saw other guys now down. You see Derrick Jones Jr., PJ Washington. These guys are getting open three-point looks, and they're not falling. And then when they're driving to the basket, these little floaters, they're not falling. Dante Exum coming off the bench, the floaters weren't really falling. And next thing you know, it starts to turn into a complete domino effect, like I said, and it becomes contagious throughout the rest of the team in that first half predominantly. I'm gonna say Luka Doncic is just gonna have to be one of those players. He's going to have to impose his will early and often. Kyrie Irving, I'd love to see him get rolling a little bit earlier as well. But one thing we have seen, I guess you want to say, over the last few months of the regular season, it's kind of like Luka Doncic is the one spearheading the first half. Kyrie Irving starts to throw in his little here and there in the maybe the second quarter, but usually that third, fourth quarter, that's where you see Kyrie Irving is just completely more aggressive as an offensive player, and Luka Doncic is now just kind of finding here's where he gets it. He still can have his stretches where he's going to be Luka Doncic, but I want to see us be more intentional. Like I said, the number one thing you just saw was just there was nobody that was playing with that decision making, and again, like aggressive decision making. Like, this is what I'm doing, and we're gonna make it happen. It was like sometimes you would see guys, the ball's fumbling around. They were not being just aggressive on defensive rebounding. And you saw it many times. How many second chance points did you see the Clippers get early on in that game? Once you saw Zubac start to get comfortable, you have got to put a body on him and let him know this is gonna be a tougher, I guess you want to say, a tougher battle than what we're showing it is. And one thing you saw obviously also was kind of like Derek Lively when he comes off the bench. He plays Zubac a little bit better. So now you're going to have to ask yourself, are we going to see Derek Lively in that starting lineup a little bit in Game 2? Because you know there have to be some adjustments. But I also said you have to be very weary of overcorrecting, because sometimes it was just a bad outing, and sometimes you have to get punched in the face to all of a sudden realize, you know what, this is a fight. Maybe that's what Daniel Gafford needed. 3 points was not going to get it done. I believe he played about 14 minutes. It was just not pretty from Daniel Gafford. And I know he had to be embarrassed, because a lot of people especially national media, starting to give lots of credit for what PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford, those additions, have done for the Dallas Mavericks. But one thing you did not see was Daniel Gafford playing with that same fire. Every rebound should be his. That needs to be his mentality. Every rebound is his. Every loose ball around him is his. Every shot at the rim, every basket at the rim is his to knock down. We're talking about a guy that completely led the entire the NBA, in field goal percentage. So there are just some things that the Dallas Mavericks are going to have to fix, but I feel like they mostly start with just aggression and playing intentionally. Stop waiting for the ball to get to you. Stop waiting around to see what everybody else is doing. Cut to the basket. I want to see Derrick Jones Jr., PJ Washington utilize their athleticism a little bit more. We're going to not have to be able to say, this is Game 2. Of course, the old adage is the series doesn't begin until you win on the road. Somebody wins on the road. And we've seen so many games, especially you talk about the Lakers game last night. They have that 20-point lead on the Nuggets in Denver, and it slips away. Jamal Murray, big shot at the end. They end up pulling out the game, and now it's 2-0 Denver Nuggets. You're going to have to see so many of these games. And also going back to the same way you watch the Philadelphia 76ers and the New York Knicks in the same way. When you're able to be one of those teams, those road teams, to pull out a game, and now you can, if the Dallas Mavericks are now in a position to be able to possibly make this series 1-1, that's going to be huge heading into Dallas. You have got to be able to pull that off. I don't care about the excuses. Last game was your mulligan. You want to get that out of the way. Now you know this is playoff basketball. This is not the same as the regular season. Teams are now going to be game planning for you and adjusting to what you do. But I don't feel at any point last game in game 1, if the shots start to fall and the Dallas Mavericks were able to keep it somewhat close, that there was a game, this was a game that was going to completely just get away from them. The bad offensive output was what completely changed the outlook of the game 1, I guess you want to say, against the Los Angeles Clippers. So come in, be direct, and again, don't go into the mindset that you have to change everything you're doing. You just have to be who you have been over the last few months of the season, and you're going to be in good, I guess you want to say, in a good direction. You're going to be in great position to make some noise in game 2. Also, the number one thing people can kind of take a look at going into game 2 are going to be, what are the defensive adjustments? Again, I don't feel like the Clippers completely just took off on us or anything, but are you going to ask yourself, is TJ Washington going to continue to guard a guy like Paul George? Maybe PJ Washington needs to be on a maybe PJ Washington. We're gonna switch up just the coverages. So who's gonna guard Paul George? Who's guarding James Harden in game 2? That's gonna have to be a big question. Derrick Jones Jr. You're looking at PJ Washington. How exactly are those minutes gonna be allotted, and who's gonna be on who? I just want to see the Dallas Mavericks come out here and be intentional. The number one thing I'm gonna say, I feel like these minutes that Josh Green start to play, especially in the second half, he's an energy spark type player, and we do know he can knock down that 3-point shot. I expect him to get way more minutes, because one thing you're gonna say in this game, Tim Hardaway Jr. in game 1, but I mean more so in this series, Tim Hardaway Jr. is going to be a guy you're going to have to snatch off the court, because if the shot's not falling, he has been very, I guess you want to say, being very a part of the loop when it comes to playing defense this year. I will give him a little bit credit for that. He's not a great defender or anything like that, but like I said, I've said in previous videos, he's good at kind of drawing that charge, body positioning, which is Luka Doncic has gotten much better at this season. But the number one thing I feel like Josh Green just has more of a versatile game. He's able to lead the charge on these fast breaks, getting loose balls, rebounding. I feel like he just has a better all-around game than a guy like Tim Hardaway Jr. And Josh Green should be getting some of those more, an uptick in those minutes. So we're going to say, if you're looking at what the Clippers did and the Mavericks did last game, it's going to start as simple as this. The Dallas Mavericks shot about 39%. The Clippers shot about 46%. The Mavericks got out-rebounded by 4 rebounds. I believe it was like 45, 41, something like that, which the Dallas Mavericks have been out-rebounding teams for a large chunk of the second half of the regular season. So those are some things. Control the boards. Forget all these offensive rebounds. You have got to show Zubac he is not that kind of player that you're going to carry a series. And I feel like if you come out here ready to go and ready to show that you're ready to bang bodies as well, and just be more physical overall, I mean throughout the entire team, you're going to be in a great position to see if you can actually make something happen in game 2 against the Los Angeles Clippers on the road. But get into that same thing. We're looking at why exactly are we having to bring in just a more, I guess you want to say, I want to see Jason, and I want to see Jason Kidd. I'm going to say this real quick. I want to see Jason Kidd just be more secure in completely being able to stop momentum in the timeouts. We've seen him so many times in the second half of this season. You kind of see Jason Kidd. It looks like Jason Kidd is popping back up. He's not able to kind of find out and feel just the flow of the way that the game's starting to slip away a little bit. But he started to get a little better in the last few weeks, I will say, of the regular season. But last game, I felt there were so many times we should have probably just been able to call a timeout earlier. Bring the guys around you and say, this is the postseason. We don't have time to waste quarters. You don't have time to waste multiple possessions back to back to back. You have got to get it done now, because there is no tomorrow once this series is over. I feel like if we're able to just continue to get back to the basics, we're going to be right where we need to be. I believe also 3-point shooting. The LA Clippers shot about 50%. The Mavericks are shooting about 30%. So this was a game you're going to have to keep them off of these. I'm guessing just getting very good looks. I guess you want to say good looks at from behind the 3-point line. We've seen the Mavericks so many times. I've said over the last stretch of the season, when you're looking at the way Jason Kidd likes to call things, sometimes he kind of tries to pinpoint out whoever the weakest 3-point shooter is on the court at any given stretch of the game. And sometimes that's played to our benefit, because now we're forcing you to take these shots, trying to get the ball out of your star players' hands. And James Harden, if James Harden is able to actually be consistent, then of course the Mavericks are going to have something to worry about. But also at the same time, continue to put pressure on a guy like that. Continue to make him show you that he is that type of player. Continue to make Paul George I guess you want to say, be able to take just more difficult shots. You want to see if you can kind of slow down the momentum that a guy like Russell Westbrook can bring off the bench. You do also still have to worry about role players like a Norman Powell, who are expecting, I know, to have much better games. A Terrence Mann, who could potentially have a better game. We're going to see. But the Dallas Mavericks, the ball is in their court. Go out there, Luka Doncic, show that you are the guy that should be the winner of the MVP this year, or at least very high up there in the rankings. Kyrie Irving, show you are a playoff performer. You have that history, you have that experience. Show that this is your team, as well as the Luka Doncic as the leaders. I want to see a Daniel Gafford show that physicality that we became accustomed to. PJ Washington, Derrick Jones Jr., be able to knock down open shots, because you have got to be able to keep the defense honest. If they're not worried about you even being able to knock down a simple open look every now and then, at least somewhat consistently, they have nothing to worry about when it comes to playing defense against you. But like I said, Daniel Gafford, he's going to be probably the biggest key factor to me in this game. We have got to see a dominant performance from a guy like that, because he showed himself on national TV. The eyes are all on you now. You're not in Washington. You're not in a situation where people are going to kind of overlook what you do. Now these games are prime time. You're on a prime time team, at least talking about a top 5 team in the Western Conference this year, in a very tough season for the Western Conference. You're now, all eyes are on you. Derek Lively, I want to see if he ends up getting more minutes. I just want to see that insane intensity we became very accustomed to seeing from the center position. So if the Mavericks are going to handle business, it's going to have to be tonight, because again, yeah, you can go back home down 0-2 and pick it back up together and win those two and bring it back even, but you don't even want to do that. You want to get these series over as quick as you can, because it's a tough battle throughout the remainder of the Western Conference playoffs. So you don't want to stretch this thing out any longer than you have to, but you're going to have to come out there, because the Clippers are not going to give it to you. They are a very proud team. They have some proud players on their team, and some guys, some old veterans that want to prove themselves and try to find their way to their first rings and success themselves. So Paul George, Russell Westbrook, James Harden, these guys with big names throughout this entire, and I guess you want to say an NBA history somewhat. These guys are players that are going to want to be able to go out there and show their own fortitude and their own mental fortitude, and show they are tough, and game 1 wasn't a fluke for them as well. So go out there ready to attack, ready to be aggressive, and ready to dominate physically if you're the Dallas Mavericks, and I feel like we're going to be in a great position to pull out a win in game 2. So I appreciate you guys for all the support. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, and share. You guys are amazing, and as always, go Mavs, but also enjoy the rest of your day.